Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna. You're watching AnewZ. Let's take a look at the top stories. A 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has come into effect, Trump describing it as a historic day. Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron are holding virtual talks on the Strait of Hormuz in Paris. And global leaders are arriving in Türkiye for the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. The 10-day ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon is being seen as a significant diplomatic step towards easing tensions in the Middle East. According to US President Donald Trump, the deal was reached through negotiations between the parties and will take effect on Thursday. However, positions remain deeply divided along the Israel-Hezbollah line, leaving the durability of the truce uncertain.
A 10-day ceasefire agreement has been reached between Israel and Lebanon. US President Donald Trump said the truce will take effect on Thursday, marking a temporary pause in the ongoing conflict between Israel and the Iran-backed Hezbollah.
I think they will. I think it's going to be, actually it's very exciting because it's 48 years. We're going to be meeting with Bibi Netanyahu, as you know, and the president of Lebanon. And I had a great talk with both of them today. They're going to be having a ceasefire, and that'll include Hezbollah. And I think it could be number 10 for me. I think we will have an agreement between Lebanon, and they're going to take care of Hezbollah. But they're going to be working on Hezbollah right now. But we'll have an agreement between Israel, very importantly, and Lebanon.
Will you support our debate?
However, significant differences remain between the parties. The Israeli army has said it does not plan to withdraw from southern Lebanon during the ceasefire. Hezbollah, in turn, stated that any deal must not allow Israeli forces freedom of movement inside Lebanese territory.
In these peace talks, we have two fundamental demands. First, the disarmament of Hezbollah. Second, a sustainable peace agreement, peace through strength. In order to achieve the ceasefire, Hezbollah insisted on two conditions. The first condition was that Israel must withdraw from all Lebanese territory up to the international border. The second condition was a ceasefire based on a quiet-for-quiet arrangement. I did not agree to either of these, and indeed neither of these conditions is being met. We are remaining in Lebanon in a reinforced security zone. This is not the 5 points that existed before Roaring Lion. It is a security zone that begins at the sea and extends to Mount Dov and the foothills of Mount Hermon up to the Syrian border. It is a security zone 10 kilometers deep, which is way stronger, way more powerful, way more continuous, and way more solid than what we had before.
The conflict escalated on March 2nd after Hezbollah launched attacks in support of Tehran. Since then, Israeli strikes have killed thousands in Lebanon and forced hundreds of thousands of civilians to flee their homes. Fighting continues, particularly in southern Lebanon, with heavy clashes reported in the strategic town of Bint Jbeil. Israel has said it aims to establish a security zone in the area. Despite ongoing diplomatic efforts, the situation remains highly fragile and it is unclear whether the ceasefire will hold. Hezbollah said on Thursday that the presence of Israeli troops in Lebanon grants the group and the Lebanese people the right to resist, stressing that any ceasefire must not allow Israel freedom of movement within the country. Nabi Berri, Speaker of the Lebanese Parliament and an ally of Hezbollah, urged residents to delay returning to their towns and villages until the situation becomes clearer and the terms of the ceasefire are finalized.
Iran has welcomed the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon with caution, calling it an integral part of the Iran-US negotiations deal. Our correspondent from Tehran brings us more.
Iran has cautiously welcomed the 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, stressing that it is an integral part of Tehran's set of conditions for an end to the conflict with Washington. Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who headed Iran's negotiating team with the US in Islamabad last Saturday, said in a post on the social platform X that Iran will approach this ceasefire with caution and stands together until complete victory is achieved. Also, Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai, in a statement, welcomed the ceasefire between Tel Aviv and Beirut. He said that the cessation of the war in Lebanon was part of the ceasefire understanding between Iran and the United States, mediated by Pakistan. Both Ghalibaf and Baghai expressed Iran's gratitude over Pakistan's mediation efforts to establish the ceasefire in Lebanon as part of the Iran-US negotiations framework. Pakistan's Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir visited Tehran on Wednesday and Thursday, holding high-level talks with President Masoud Pezeshkian, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. He also held a rare meeting with the commander of Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, Major General Ali Abdullahi. Turash Shiralilu, reporting from Tehran for AnewZ.
While some families are returning to their homes, others remain displaced and say they're waiting for a lasting ceasefire before deciding to go back to southern Lebanon. Residents began making their way back following a 10-day ceasefire with Israel as convoys carrying belongings moved through heavily damaged roads and villages. In Nabatea and nearby areas, people crossed rubble-strewn streets and destroyed infrastructure, with some waving victory signs as they returned. Despite the ceasefire, much of the region remains heavily damaged and still undergoing clearance. Some residents say they are believed to be back, while others remain cautious about returning.
We're here thanks to these heroic young men, and we stayed here, in our hometown with our livelihoods and all that. What could we do? Thank God the war ended thanks to these heroic young men, the fighters.
Let the war officially stop, that's it. At that point we will return. But now, no, I'm telling you, we won't return until the war stops and they withdraw from all Lebanese territory.
Some countries and organisations have welcomed the 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, saying it could pave the way towards peace in the region. However, significant questions remain over whether the ceasefire will hold in practice.
World leaders have welcomed the 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon brokered by US President Donald Trump. In a post on X, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the agreement brings significant relief at a time when the conflict has already claimed many lives. She stressed that Europe will continue to call for full respect for Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity, while also increasing humanitarian assistance to the Lebanese people. The EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, also welcomed the ceasefire, saying it would allow for an immediate halt to hostilities and provide much-needed relief for civilians. Speaking during a visit to Morocco, she urged both sides to confirm the agreement, adding that it should pave the way for reduced violence and renewed negotiations towards a more sustainable peace. She also highlighted the importance of ensuring the safety of civilians on both sides of the Lebanon-Israel border, calling on Hezbollah to lay down its weapons and on Israel to respect Lebanon's sovereignty. French President Emmanuel Macron also voiced support for the ceasefire, while expressing concern over its fragility amid continued military operations. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also welcomed the agreement, saying it could pave the way towards lasting peace. He reaffirmed Pakistan's unwavering support for Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity and pledged continued efforts for long-term stability in the region. The Japanese government also welcomed the US-brokered ceasefire, describing it as an important step towards peace in the Middle East. Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Masanao Ozaki said in Tokyo that Japan views the agreement as meaningful progress towards regional stability.
A virtual conference on the Strait of Hormuz will be held on Friday, led by the UK and France, and bringing together around 40 other countries. The discussions will focus on maritime security, economic measures and coordination for a potential multinational naval mission. Our correspondent Zainab Farajzadeh has more.
French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer are set to chair a virtual conference on Friday, bringing together countries willing to support a proposed multinational mission in the Strait of Hormuz. The initiative, led by Paris and London, aims to restore freedom of navigation through the key shipping route once security conditions allow, with both leaders stressing the operation would be strictly defensive and separate from ongoing military action. Discussions are expected to focus on four main areas: maritime security, economic measures, humanitarian concerns, and cooperation with industry. That includes the possibility of financial sanctions on Iran if the strait remains closed, alongside efforts to work with shipping companies to prepare for a safe resumption of transit. Talks will also look at securing the release of stranded seafarers and vessels, as well as coordinating international naval contributions for a potential future mission. Around 40 countries are expected to take part as the UK and France lead efforts to coordinate maritime security and stabilize global shipping routes. Diplomatic sources say Britain is leading the political track of the initiative, while France is focusing on military planning, assessing what assets participating countries could provide and how they might be deployed. The push comes as Western allies avoid joining US-led military action in the region, instead positioning this effort as a post-conflict stabilization mission. Zaina Farizadeh, AnewZ, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Europe could run short of jet fuel within about 6 weeks if global supply disruptions persist, the International Energy Agency has warned. IAEA Executive Director said tensions in the Middle East, particularly risks to flows through the Strait of Hormuz, could trigger one of the most severe energy crises in history. He warned that prolonged disruption of oil and gas shipments could push up fuel, electricity and transport prices and may even lead to flight cancellations, with wider knock-on effects for global inflation and growth. Romania's defence ministry said radar systems detected a drone breaching its airspace during a Russian overnight attack on neighbouring Ukraine. The aircraft was tracked before contact was lost near the border area of Chilaia Veche in the country's southeast. A member of both the European Union and NATO, Romania has reported several similar incidents since Russia intensified strikes on Ukrainian ports along the Danube River. China's stepping up calls for dialogue to ease tensions in the Middle East as concerns grow over regional stability and global security. For more, we go to Mahnur Maktoum.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has called for the United States and Iran to return to the negotiating table, stressing that a political solution remains the top priority amid escalating tensions in the Middle East. Speaking during talks in Beijing with Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani, Wang said that the conflict should never have happened and warned that its prolongation is already impacting global energy security and navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. He reiterated China's position in favor of resolving disputes through dialogue, describing Beijing as maintaining an objective and impartial stance while supporting mediation efforts, including those by Pakistan, and remaining engaged with all parties. Wang also highlighted growing global instability and called for stronger multilateral coordination, noting that China stands ready to work with Italy to safeguard international order and promote stability. Tajani, for his part, reaffirmed Italy's commitment to the One China policy and expressed support for closer coordination with Beijing in addressing regional and global challenges. Manu Maktoum, AnewZ, Beijing.
All 8 people on board a helicopter were killed after it crashed in Indonesia's West Kalimantan province. The helicopter lost contact just 5 minutes after taking off from a plantation area in Malawi on Thursday. Rescuers later found debris in a densely forested hilly area about 3 kilometres from the last known position. Search teams are working to reach the remote crash site as investigations into the cause continue. The Antalya Diplomacy Forum is underway in Türkiye, with senior leaders from across the region already taking part in opening discussions on global challenges and shifting geopolitical dynamics. Further high-level speeches and bilateral meetings are expected throughout the day, including contributions from foreign ministers and heads of state. Our correspondent Katie Wilson has more.
Hello from Antalya. We are here as the 5th edition of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum has just got underway, and it's been a packed day already. We've already been hearing from regional leaders, Prime Minister of Georgia, Kobakidze, and President of Kazakhstan, Tokayev, on this very theme behind me here. Mapping tomorrow, managing uncertainties, and that underpins this whole forum this year. And of course, it's a very apt theme given the war between the US and Israel and Iran, which kicked off in February. And we're hearing about discussions on the sidelines of this forum about that crisis in the Gulf and planning for the future. And there are plenty of key figures here that will be speaking today, including Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andrei Sybiha and the President of Syria, Ahmed al-Shara. And not only that, but the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, is in attendance, and we are expecting Hikmet Hajiev, the assistant to the President of Azerbaijan, to be speaking twice today, once later this afternoon, and soon, very imminently, this morning. So it is a packed day. This is only the opening day, and we are expecting the President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, to be formally opening the forum this afternoon. So it's crazy that so many things have happened, and the forum hasn't officially even got underway yet. But if you look around here, this is all of the themes, all of the topics that are going to be discussed. So there will be plenty to keep us busy today, and I'm sure I'll have lots to tell you later on today as this forum has got going a little bit more. But for now, this is Katie Wilson and Elbruz Musayev from Antalya in Turkey.
Azerbaijan says its foreign policy agenda is now fully focused on peace, regional cooperation and integration amid ongoing global instability. That was the message from Hikmet Hajiev, assistant to the President of Azerbaijan, in an interview with AnewZ on the sidelines of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum in Türkiye.
ADF forum with an agenda of the peace, and before we were talking about an elements of the conflict. Unfortunately, they were persisting, but today Azerbaijan's agenda is completely about peace, and it's also regional ownership and regional responsibility and regional integration and cooperation that Azerbaijan tries to deliver and to shape our region in a peaceful manner. And in that sense, Azerbaijan is not just waiting for external solutions towards regional challenges and problems. We have a full regional knowledge and awareness, and we are very adamant of the realities of our region, and based on such principles and parameters, and we have shaped an in a sense, Azerbaijan acted like an architect of the new status quo in the region. That's also based on the norms and principles of international law, international legitimacy. That is all in all that Azerbaijan tries to present at the time of the global turmoil and also crisis of the multilateralism. Regional ownership matters a lot.
We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll discuss the diplomatic significance of talks taking place on the sidelines of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum and what they may signal about broader efforts to reduce tensions in the Middle East. Stay with us. Welcome back to AnewZ. The Antalya Diplomacy Forum is once again bringing together global leaders at a time of heightened geopolitical tension, with reports that discussions on the sidelines may focus on mediation efforts related to a potential ceasefire between the United States and Iran. Pakistan's playing a facilitating role in diplomatic contacts, while a meeting between Türkiye, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and Egypt is also expected. highlighting increasing coordination among regional powers seeking to stabilise the Middle East security environment. Let's bring in our guest now. Mr. Melih Demirtaş joins us, former diplomat and political analyst from Ankara, Türkiye. Melih, welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Ms. Tuna.
Now, as I just highlighted there, and you'd be very much aware of this as well, as Hakan Fidan made a statement about some of the meetings that he'd be participating in on the sidelines, and one of them was a potential meeting involving Türkiye, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and Egypt, suggesting coordination among influential regional actors there. So how do we see momentum? We see momentum in mediation efforts with other middle power countries coming in. How do you see these talks in terms of possible tangible outcomes?
Thank you, Ms. Tuna. Actually, you summarized very well the middle powers and the power of these middle powers, maybe new regional players. These are maybe all summarizing also the spirit of Antalya Diplomacy Forum. As you know, for these past years, I think it is the 5th edition now, in 2026 now, starting officially today, with President Mr. Erdogan's, of course, opening speech, and of course, Mr. Fidan's speeches. But I think the informal parts already started, as you may also seen from the news, from yesterday evening. Already, Mr. Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif from Pakistan, his foreign minister, they already had some informal meetings with our foreign minister, Mr. Fidan. And of course, with today, there will be much more formal talkings, as you said, between also different actors, also including Egypt, Saudi Arabia. I think such actors can be also counted as the important players who are also suffered from these changing circumstances, Ms. Tuna. Because as you see, from the beginning of this first edition of Antalya Diplomacy Forum, we had, I think, every year some different crises in our region. I just also served at those times in this first edition in foreign ministry. I just remember that this Russia-Ukrainian war was so important tension, and the first, especially topics in the first forums was always dedicated to especially such crises. And now look at this, the big picture. We can also see many important other problems, including first of all in the Middle East, also some other regions. And we can say such spirits also, Türkiye maybe wants to give a spirit, maybe a kind of lesson to some actors. I think first of all Israel's and some destructions policies of some countries. I think first of all Israel's, that some spirits can really be helpful, especially the second track diplomacy, especially this back channel diplomacy like we see in Antalya nowadays, will be really supportive to this classical diplomacy. Especially, it will hinder such destructions, which will especially be the first motivation of some countries like Israel's, especially in these last years.
And so Türkiye, as you've touched on there, has positioned itself as a facilitator in multiple diplomatic processes in recent years. How does hosting these discussions reinforce Ankara's broader diplomatic ambitions?
This can be also taught from a regional diplomacy, classical diplomacy, but also from a much more theoretical realm. Of course, to the audience, maybe to be much more theoretical can be a bit tiring, but maybe as a framework, I can say that we have some stalemates, we have some dilemmas with some classical methods of diplomacy. Because as you also see from this very important competition of powers, this national interest, especially these clashes and conflicts, these are unending, especially in these last years, especially in our region. So Antalya's spirit, or its public and cultural diplomacy spirit, gave first of all, also taught to the leaders that these communication channels can be opened first. Yes, still the hard power rhetoric, still some important crisis atmospheres important, but also the actors can know each other or can maybe know the important arguments also from these back doors. And we can say in Antalya or some other places, also in Islamabad talks, I think the second round will start soon. We can say that such talks also give this spirit to these other maybe phases. For example, think about this next important NATO summit, which will also take place in Turkey, in Ankara, very soon, in 2 months. So also such channels, such diplomatic, especially academic channels, give this first stimulus and motivation to the leaders, and they can talk maybe with the power of the second track or maybe public diplomacy channels.
And Melih, some analysts argue that regional diplomacy is increasingly conducted through flexible formats rather than traditional institutional frameworks. As you said earlier, that was a part of your answer to the first question. Are forums like Antalya becoming alternative diplomatic platforms, perhaps?
we have seen such platforms after the end of the Second World War, Ms. Tuna, but it is already, I think, maybe coined or already mentioned with some, I do not want to call actually Western, maybe quote unquote, aims, but especially after all this humanitarian crisis, after all these one-sided policies of some Western countries, especially like we see in the Gaza war, the Gaza genocidal war of some countries, I mean, who are supporting some other countries like Israel. So we see that instead of such Western-inspired methods like Munich Security Conference, like Chatham conferences, like Washington or New York-based conferences, also some other actors' inspirations, motivations turn to be so important. Because of this, maybe Antalya, as the cradle of so many important civilizations, because as you look at, for example, one of the hall or conference rooms name in Antalya nowadays is Patara. As you may know also from history, Patara is also the cradle of democratic procedures. It is also Western maybe ideals is already gathered in this city. I think all this maybe collaboration of this idea, thought, philosophy, I think Turkey also reflects maybe through this channel of the Antalya, maybe some other kind of inspirations other than Western inspirations we can also give to the world, especially to these regional actors, including Iran, including Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, who are really also maybe motivated to see such maybe motivations also under the leadership of Turkey.
Okay, Melih, let's bring in another very significant development. It's a very crucial moment, actually. We know about a ceasefire that has been announced between Israel and Lebanon now, which was highly anticipated because since the US and Iran talks began, we know that Israel actually increased its attacks on Lebanon. So now that's this is a very crucial moment. How do you see this dynamic moving forward, influencing the talks between the United States and Iran now? Because one of the conditions that Iran was very set on was that Israel cease its attacks on Lebanon. What's your analysis there about this most critical development?
This is a very important question, and thanks also reminding to me, Ms. Tuna, because I think this Lebanon part of the story is really shake all the world. Please, if you remember the first negotiation, Islamabad, Mr. G.D. Vance and the Iranian, of course, important representatives in Islamabad last weekend, we saw just these direct attacks. Hundreds of civilians also died again because of this, destructive policies again of Israel. And now I think thanks to maybe Mr. Trump's initiative or motivation, also under the pressure of this international public realm, because look at this table nowadays, United States and Israel bloc is really under heavy pressure of this global impulse, also from the European partners, of course from Russia and China, and also the other actors including Turkey or Azerbaijan. So I think Mr. Trump may be forced behind the doors, behind this back channel of diplomacies. You can see that he really forced Netanyahu in his far-rightist government. And now, thankfully, we see a ceasefire atmosphere in Lebanon. But again, I want to repeat, we really cannot so easily trust Israel after what it done, in this last 3 years, after really under this Netanyahu's far-rightist government. And we are really very careful for the next provocations of Israel, because we are hopeful also these Islamabad talks will continue. And all the actors, but firstly, I think Mr. Trump and United States must be very careful about the provocations. And we again will maybe talk this, especially the sensitive issues in Antalya nowadays, also between all the leaders, of the region.
Okay. Melih, I want to talk about another striking article in a Turkish newspaper that was published a couple of days ago, which brought to light that this whole scenario was about bringing Iran to the table to make a deal with Trump to operate the Strait of Hormuz and make it a profitable thing for the United States as well as Iran. Did you actually see that article?
Actually, similar views, because some articles are always are going the same, line, Ms. Tuna, because 50-50, I always, in this your last program, talked with valuable Mr. Hassanov, and I also said that, this 50-50% or half-half issue in these negotiations. Half is about this nuclear characteristic of Iran. The other half is about, of course, economic a very important sensitive structure nowadays because of Strait of Hormuz. In your last, news section before me, you also mentioned very, I think, importantly that Europe is really under a heavy tension, under heavy pressure because of this lack of energy. Maybe they can have important problems among its public. And now, I think with all these maybe tensions, yes, Iran must come to the table because Mr. Trump and also the Western alliance is also under very important tension of these economic insufficiencies. But again, Iran also knows now this deadlock. Iran knows also some limits of this Western alliance. And we hope that all these parts, all Mr. Trump's and Iran's cabinet will come to be, prepared to make a very durable peace in the next round of Islamabad. We, all the regional actors, really waited this durable peace.
And my last question to you, Millie, if tensions between the US and Iran were to ease, what wider ripple effects might this have across the Middle East security landscape?
There are, of course, options always told by analysts or pessimists, maybe diplomats or statesmen. We do not know still the camps, Ms. Tuna, because the camps are so tense still. I see camps because United States and Israel is a camp. We already know that for these last years. But another camp is definitely now Iran, Russia, and possibly China. We can say Mr. Trump will visit soon China because of this. He is also so, I think, very energetic or motivated he seems to be, because he also said that he will go maybe to Islamabad. We do not know still the details. But this Asian trip, maybe, quote unquote, makes Mr. Trump so maybe motivated to see this peaceful atmosphere. But we do not know the next card of the other bloc. Russia, Iran, and Chinese non-Western bloc, we can say, because all the actors know nowadays that no bloc can really have a supreme card at the hand, because all the economies and all the parts of the world are really interconnected. And the actors, first of all, the actors like Israel must know that they must not provoke this sensitive interrelation, this sensitive interdependence of the world economies and regional economies.
Okay, Mr. Melit Demirtas, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure having you on AnewZ.
Thank you, Mr. Farvi.
After the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay with us. Welcome back to AnewZ. Syria says it's positioning itself as a key transit hub for regional energy flows, offering new routes linking the Persian Gulf to Türkiye and beyond. Here's more on that story.
Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara said Syria is offering what he described as a safe corridor and alternative route for energy shipments across the region. Speaking to local state media during a visit to Türkiye, al-Shara said connectivity was being enhanced between the Arab Gulf states and Türkiye via Syria and Jordan. He made the remarks after arriving in Türkiye to attend the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, which kicked off Friday and will continue through the weekend. Al-Shara noted that Iraqi oil is now being shipped through Syrian ports under a joint agreement between Damascus and Baghdad. He said the agreement reflected growing regional cooperation in the energy sector. In this regard, the Syrian leader highlighted the so-called 4Cs project, a long-discussed initiative aimed at transforming the region into a major energy and transport hub.
What the world is seeking most urgently right now is security for supply chains and energy. This integration, linking Azerbaijan and the Caspian Sea, Syria and Türkiye on the Mediterranean, and the Gulf's access to both the Red Sea and the Arabian Gulf, fits that need precisely.
Plans include the development of pipelines, railways, and road corridors designed to facilitate the movement of energy resources and goods across multiple regions. Advocates of the project say the initiative could significantly reduce reliance on traditional maritime choke points, such as the Strait of Hormuz. El-Shara stressed that such initiatives would serve to enhance regional connectivity and economic integration. His remarks come as regional countries explore alternative routes to ensure the uninterrupted flow of energy supplies at a time of increased geopolitical tensions. This is Adam Morrow for AnewZ in Istanbul, Turkey.
Wind power saw the sharpest growth in Azerbaijan's energy production in the first quarter of this year. Generation reached 247.7 million kilowatt hours, up 26 times from last year. This is according to operational data on electricity indicators for the first quarter of this year released by the Ministry of Energy. Overall electricity production also increased, rising by 10.6% year on year. Meanwhile, electricity generation at the solid waste incineration plant went up by 22% compared to the same period last year. Azerbaijan and Russian officials have inspected progress on key road and railway projects which form part of the components of the Zangezur corridor. The visit included a review of the newly constructed bridge over the Araz River, seen as a strategic link for regional connectivity. Here's more.
Recent regional tensions have once again demonstrated that transport corridors passing through Azerbaijan are reliable and resilient. This corridor continued to operate without interruption and fulfilled its function, further proving Azerbaijan's dependability. At the same time, Azerbaijan's initiative to allow transit shipments to Armenia was positively assessed. This step contributes to peace, regional cooperation, and more efficient logistics. The Agban Bridge has already been fully completed, and construction of the border checkpoint will be finalized in the near future. This route holds significant potential for linking the Persian Gulf with the Black Sea and is of strategic importance for the entire region.
We are at an international border crossing point, where a new bridge can be seen as a key component of the North-South International Transport Corridor. At the same time, this infrastructure is also part of the East-West Transport Corridor. The Russian Federation is highly interested in seeing this infrastructure become operational as soon as possible. It is modern and convenient and will particularly facilitate cargo transportation for Russian drivers to the Islamic Republic of Iran, as well as to Nakhchivan and further on to Türkiye. We believe this project will be successful and will benefit all our countries through joint use and shared advantages.
Azerbaijan and Armenia have made new contact on the margins of an international parliamentary forum in Türkiye. Azerbaijan's parliamentary speaker Sahiba Gafarova has held talks with her Armenian counterpart Alan Simonyan. The talks took place on the sidelines of the 152nd Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union, which is being held in Istanbul from 15th to 19th April. This year's assembly is focused on hope, peace and justice for future generations. China and Turkmenistan have agreed on a new phase of development at one of Central Asia's largest gas fields, alongside plans to expand processing capacity and pipeline infrastructure. The deal comes as China remains heavily reliant on Turkmen gas supplies and looks to secure long-term volumes. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimurzina has the full details.
China's state-owned energy giant CNPC and Turkmenistan's state company Turkmengas have signed an agreement to launch their fourth phase of development at the Galkanush gas field, alongside construction of a gas processing plant with an annual capacity of 10 billion cubic meters. Turkmengas chairman Maksat Babayev said the project will be financed from Turkmenistan's own resources. According to Reuters, the total cost is estimated at $5.1 billion. The deal comes as China continues to rely heavily on Turkmen gas delivered through the Turkmenistan-China pipeline system, which has been operating for more than 16 years. The network currently transports over 30 billion cubic meters annually through 3 lines, with a 4th line planned that would increase capacity to around 65 billion cubic meters per year. At the center of this cooperation is the Galkanush gas field, which also carries broader strategic significance. Beyond existing exports to China, it's seen as a potential supply base for future routes toward South Asia and possibly Europe via the Caspian Sea. And according to Britain's Gefnik Line, reserves at the Galconush and nearby structures are estimated at 27.4 trillion cubic meters, underlining the field's global scale and importance. Pariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, AnewZ.
We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue examining the role of economic diplomacy in shaping relations between Azerbaijan and Russia, and what the meeting of the Intergovernmental Commission may indicate about broader regional cooperation. We'll see you shortly. Welcome back to AnewZ. The 24th meeting of the Azerbaijan-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Economic Cooperation has taken place in Zangilan, bringing together senior officials to discuss trade, investment and regional economic coordination. The meeting comes at a sensitive time in bilateral ties, with both sides signalling the importance of maintaining pragmatic cooperation, particularly in economic sectors, connectivity and reconstruction projects in the region's liberated territories. To discuss the broader significance of this meeting and what it signals for regional dynamics, let's bring in our guest now, Nargis Mammadova, expert in international relations at STEM Center from Baku, Azerbaijan. Nargis, welcome to the program.
Hello, thank you for the invitation.
Now, I want to begin with a standout statement. Deputy Prime Minister Shahin Mustafayev emphasised principles of good neighbourliness and equal partnership. What message does that wording send about Azerbaijan's diplomatic positioning?
Well, I think that even after what happened between Azerbaijan and Russia after the plane crash, yes, the political situation and there was some diplomatic tensions, let's say, between Azerbaijan and Russia, but business is business. I think that these kind of meetings are very profitable for both sides to understand that, okay, something happened, diplomacy can fix it, and then we need to continue to bring the new economic opportunities to each other, and both sides emphasized these motives on their speech. What is important more is that today there is also a meeting on the Azerbaijan-Russian Business Council. And we see a lot of people, a lot of businessmen that are currently working on the both markets to develop economic opportunities. And what's very curious here, that after the war ended in Iran, everything changed. I think that Russia understood that Azerbaijan is very crucial, and Azerbaijan is a very stable and reliable partner to make business, to develop trade relations. Due to the fact that Russia itself on the war with Ukraine, I think that they will seek lots of opportunities and will find these opportunities in Azerbaijan to develop Russian businesses in Azerbaijan or Azerbaijan businesses in Russia.
So you say business is business. Economic cooperation often remains strong, even during periods of political strain. Is this an indication that both sides are prioritizing pragmatic engagement now?
Well, if you know some result, you need to be pragmatic, I think. Yes. By the way, I think that these pragmatic economic relations that we are starting to rebuilding or increasing with Russia actually is due to the best work of our diplomats. Because if you remember, 2 or 3 days ago, there were a common statement from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Azerbaijan, that the Russian side pay compensation to those who also was in the tragedy in Aktau due to plane crash. So I think that is the work of the diplomats. And after the work of diplomats, after the work of diplomacy, the economic cooperation can come to the table of discussion. And I think that what we see today is the diplomatic win of Azerbaijan, because we wanted from Russia a compensation, and they did it, they claimed it. So today we can go on to pragmatic economic relations with them.
Mm-hmm. And representatives discussed cooperation in infrastructure and development, including projects in the liberated territories. How important is reconstruction diplomacy in shaping regional economic partnership, especially the dynamic between these two countries?
I think it provides more and more opportunities, and it provides more flexibility to both countries, not to concentrate all the infrastructure in the major cities, the other cities in Azerbaijan, like in Baku or Ganja or Sumgait, which are the most industrial cities. For example, not only because of that, but the other fact is Azerbaijan also wanted to make a very strong economic hub and economic position of in the liberated territories of Azerbaijan, and it's very important for the opening to the new markets. It's very also crucial for the development of North and South corridor, and at the same time, it's very interesting that as soon as the Iran war not ended, but there's a ceasefire between Iran, Israel, and also USA. So as soon as it has happened, Russia came to the Azerbaijan. Let's do something. Let's do some new infrastructure discussions. Let's talk about Resht Astara, which is a very crucial point on the North-South corridor. Also the Arband bridge. I think that all of this is very essential for Russia's positioning its economic vision to the South Caucasus overall.
And Azerbaijan has diversified economic partnerships in recent years, strengthening ties with Türkiye, Central Asia and Europe. How does cooperation with Russia fit into its broader foreign policy balance?
Well, let's start with that. Like many Azerbaijani businessmen doing business in Russia, and Russia, to that their market is close to Europe due to war, they need to focus on another markets. And Azerbaijan can be one of these markets that can open up for Russian businessmen. And it's very interesting that Overchuk, in his speech today, said that we are talking about people-to-people, you know, let's say, yeah, people-to-people diplomacy, we can say about it, and that there's a need to learn Azerbaijani in Russia. And I think that maybe in the last 2 or 3 years, it was first kind of this statement, okay? Because Russia is seeing how we position Russian language in Azerbaijan, like we are using it in the communication, but still the official language of Azerbaijan is Azerbaijani, but still we use Russian language. It also helps to promote business opportunities. And I think that also we can hear in the future new possibilities, new projects, new deals, economic deals between the business communities of Azerbaijan and Russia, maybe new flight destinations to a major industrial Russian cities. I think that even now negotiations about this are going.
Okay, I'll ask you one last question, Nargis. So the signing of cooperation documents such as digital transport frameworks suggests efforts to modernise trade links. How important is digitalisation in strengthening this regional economic integration?
I think very important. We live in the world of digitalization. Of course, trade links and trade industry, let's say, should be digitalized to avoid bureaucracy, to avoid some errors on the connectivity between countries in the South Caucasus and Russia or with any other partner. It can be even through middle corridor, okay? Because in the middle corridor, there is a huge problem. For example, in the middle corridor, there is a huge problem with the digitalization of the standards of using AI in ports and other digital infrastructure. And Azerbaijan is committed to build its own efficient digital infrastructure, digital strategy, and recently there was a meeting with our president Ilham Aliyev about the digital future of Azerbaijan, which is, I think, very profitable. It can help to make the connectivity between regions more reliable, faster, smoother, and make the image of Azerbaijan as a transit hub even more bigger and more influential.
Okay, Ms. Nargis Mammadova, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time and analysis.
Thank you very much.
That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to AnewZ for all the latest updates.